Welcome to the Astrology Show with your host, Kelly Fox. Each week, Kelly will give you access to the current transits that are a valuable tool which provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has through our sun sign. Understanding the current planetary influences each week can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. Sometimes, events in your life may seem completely random, but there is a pattern to the order of these events, one set in motion in part by you, and in part by the planets and stars in the sky and their influence on your life here on Earth. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, if you're going to get that promotion, move to a new city, or fall in love, tune in to the Astrology Show for guidance. It can help you anticipate problems before they occur, give you tools to cope with changes, and help you look forward to the wonderful days ahead. Kelly Fox is a professional astrologer and internet pioneer who launched astrology.com, one of the first and most successful astrology websites. Today, her passion lies with her new site, theastrologer.com, where she brings a modern-day approach to an ancient wisdom. Please join Kelly each week to learn more about how the planets can align for you.
Hi there, and welcome to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelly Fox. How did you find the solar eclipse? Oh, the total solar eclipse we had today in Leo at the very last degree. Of course, the whole of the US is abuzz about this eclipse. It crossed 14 states from coast to coast. Basically for most of the day from 9 a.m. through 4 p.m. And it had a totality of about 70 miles wide. And the exact eclipse lasted just under 3 minutes. And I was quite upset that I wasn't in the path of totality, that my schedule would not allow me to go to one of those 14 states and really view the eclipse with my special glasses. So would love to hear from anybody if you actually were lucky enough to be able to experience the eclipse. It is definitely big news, and I will tell you more about why later on in the show. There's so much going on this week. It's like I'm going to be cramming the show jam-packed with information. Now, the biggest headline of the day, the week, the month, the year is this total solar eclipse that we've had today. Also this week, we have Saturn, Lord of Karma, turning direct. It's been retrograde since April. We also have on Friday, love planet Venus moving into Leo. On Tuesday, we have the Sun moving into Virgo. And I will dedicate next week's show to all you Virgos out there. There was just way too much to talk about this week, and I didn't want to really skip over any details for Virgo. And of course, we're in the dreaded pesky Mercury retrograde cycle. There's other planetary aspects going on this week as well, and most of them are part of this eclipse. So it's not just with eclipse, which is a supercharged, intense new moon, where the moon blocks the rays of the sun from our perspective here on Earth. So basically we have a moon sandwich, the moon in the middle and the Earth on one side and the sun on the other. But there's a lot of other planetary involvement with this eclipse, which is making it even more intense than just a regular old eclipse, and especially a new moon, which is what this is. And each month, every time we have a new moon, I'm always harping on about starting new things when you have a new moon. It's really good for new beginnings, but of course you can't have a new beginning until you have an ending. And when it happens with a solar eclipse like it is right now, We have to have a huge ending before we can have a huge new beginning. And, of course, this solar eclipse occurred at the very last degree of Leo, and the very last degree is a fated degree. It's called the anaretic degree, the very last degree of any sign. So the anaretic degree, the solar eclipse occurred at the anaretic degree of Leo. Leo is all about rulers and leaders and kings and queens and monarchs. And basically, Leo is the royal sign. So it just represents leadership. It also represents creativity. So you put all that together and, also with this solar eclipse, it was next to, the sun and moon were next to the royal star of Regulus. And Regulus is a fixed star at the very last degree of Leo where this solar eclipse occurred, which is really interesting. So it's a double dose of leadership and royalty and management. Also, we have the involvement of warrior planet Mars, action planet Mars, is sitting at that point with Regulus and the sun and the moon. Also with the eclipse, there's a sextile from Jupiter, a trine from Saturn, and a trine from Uranus. So we have a lot of planetary activity. And I'm going to break all that down throughout the show and explain more about that. Now, taking a step back, I want to explain more about this solar eclipse before I get into the astrological meanings of everything. So an eclipse, and this is a total eclipse, which is very rare, and I'll tell you why. Solar eclipse, it's when the moon, as I said, passes between the Earth and the Sun, and the moon blocks the rays of the Sun. And so it's been known as turning the lights out, because at that moment, during the exact eclipse, across those 14 states, there's complete darkness. And so throughout history, there's been omens and superstitions about when there's a solar eclipse, particularly a total solar eclipse like we had today. And if you think back to ancient times, there wasn't any electricity. There weren't any lights. So this was a really big deal, and it was a lot more noticeable than what we have today. So if you think here's the bright shining sun, and then the moon comes across it to block it, and so then there's no light in the middle of the day. That's probably going to be pretty scary to any sort of ancient culture. So that's where all these omens and supernatural superstitions came in around a solar eclipse, and particularly a total solar eclipse. So the moon casts a shadow when it blocks the sun. As I said, was about 70 miles wide, and eclipses happen every year. They usually come in pairs, so we have 2 pairs a year, sometimes 3, which is sort of unusual. And here's a really, really interesting and sort of spooky bit of information. This is the first eclipse that has solely or exclusively fallen in the USA since 1776. So I thought that date was really interesting. It was, I want to say the birth, but please take that the right way. The birth of the USA, when it all sort of came about, when it became official. We know that there were people here way before then. So it's but the last exclusive eclipse was in 1776. So that is just mind-blowing. Really, it's definitely food for thought, put it that way. So there's a 70-mile 70-mile path of this eclipse, all the way through small towns across the USA. And so I've heard that there's been lots of traffic jams and places have been fully booked out where no one's ever heard of these locations. And so there's been millions of people that have travelled to the path of this eclipse to watch it, because even if you don't know consciously that the last total solar eclipse across the USA exclusively was in 1776, somewhere I think with our connected consciousness, I think on some level we all sort of know this, and we're waiting with anticipation to see where we're headed, because this is really big news, because the solar eclipse represents huge endings and huge beginnings. And so anybody, and it affects all of us, it's not just one particular sign, but anybody born towards the end of a fire sign, and that's Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, this will be affecting you more so, or anybody that has planets at the very end of a fire sign. This is definitely an energy that's affecting you more so. And of course, there's other factors to consider, but just on a basic level, if you're born at the end of Aries, Leo, or Sag, or even at the beginning of the next sign, and that's Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, this eclipse will really be affecting you. And it's all about transformation and change. And it doesn't mean that, we're willingly opting for change in our life. It might be forced sometimes. It just depends on other aspects in the natal chart. And as I say each week, if you have not had your natal chart done or printed or generated, go to my website, theastrologer.com/chartwheel, to get yourself a free chart wheel, and it will tell you where the planets were at the time of your birth. So, this solar eclipse, big news for the USA. It only occurred in the USA and nowhere else in the world this time. That's why it's so huge for us. We're going to take a short break. After the break, I will continue, so stay tuned.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Aloha, my name is Jennifer O'Neill, and I'd like to invite you to come join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time for my show, Spirit Chat. Spirit Chat focuses on simplifying the process of using the spiritual tools and gifts you were born with in a way that fits into your everyday life. I also teach different techniques that will help you learn how to navigate the spirit realm and empower you on your own spiritual journey. So join me this Wednesday as I guide you through the spirit world.
Hi, this is John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting, here for RAD, the entertainment industry's voice for road safety. Style is a personal thing, and your lifestyle is your business. But if you take it on the road, it becomes everybody's business. So please, plan ahead, designate before you celebrate. Friends, don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service announcement brought to you by RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
Hi there, and welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelly Fox, talking about the total solar eclipse that the US and the US only has just experienced today. Now, the total solar eclipse is really unusual for lots of reasons. It's a supercharged new moon, and it's about beginnings and endings, but this one involves a lot of other planets, which I'm going to cover later on in the show. It's also conjunct the royal star Regulus. And, because it's at the last degree of Leo, Leo is a sign of leadership and rulership and kings and queens and leaders and all of that sort of stuff. I'm not going to get into any political views or whatever. That's not really what the show is about. But I do want to mention one really fascinating tidbit is our US president was born on an eclipse. So it's absolutely fascinating to me that we've got this supercharged eclipse right now. It's only in the USA. It's nowhere else. And it's coast to coast in the USA, which is really unusual. So the last time that we had an exclusive eclipse to the USA was in 1776. So our president was born under an eclipse as well. So it should be interesting just to follow along and see what happens, because this eclipse at the last degree of Leo is all about kings and rulers. So it will be fascinating to follow. And so also with the involvement of all the other planets, August is a pretty intense month. There's so much going on. And with regards to the astrological world, it's like eclipses are the big thing. Usually when an outer planet changes sign, that's big news. And then when there's an eclipse, that's also big news. So there's things that like rank and rate really highly, and eclipses are right up there with big changes. They really coincide with current events that go on. And also, if this eclipse is affecting any planet in your natal chart, then you're in for big changes, lots and lots of changes. Now, the thing with an eclipse is the moon gets in front of the sun from our perspective here on Earth and blocks the light of the sun. So that's quite dramatic, saying, oh, the lights are going out. With the moon, it's about emotions, and the sun it's the core of our being. It's what sustains us. It gives us light and heat and energy. And then when you've got emotions of the moon blocking the energy of the sun, we can expect some pretty big dramatic flare-ups, because the moon is all about emotions. So it's interesting to see and how it's going to play out. Also, some astrologers have a theory where the length of time of the eclipse represents years. So basically, this eclipse was just under 3 minutes. So events will unfold from this eclipse within 3 years' time from this eclipse. Because with any sort of astrological influence, and particularly bigger influences like this eclipse, it's not about something that happens on the day. Eclipses usually unfold, and again, depending on where it sits in your chart, eclipses unfold over days, weeks, months, and sometimes even years. But the trigger is the eclipse. So don't expect anything mind-blowing to happen today, but really over time, things will start to become more clear and more apparent. So back to the eclipse of today. I did mention that with the eclipse there was the involvement of other planets, and the first one I'm going to address is the conjunction from Mars. Now, Mars is currently in Leo, so Mars will be is sitting next to the Sun, Moon, and Regulus. So there's so much Leo energy at the moment with all these planets in Leo, and of course in fire signs, because you've got Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is in Sagittarius and Uranus is in Aries. There is so much fire energy. It's sort of like we've got a lot of action and activity going on, and we want to get things moving and we want to get things done. And some of us are going to be really impatient to get a move on, and things might start to happen really fast. So, and especially because of this Mercury retrograde we're in, it's like we might have to redo things. We're caught up with the pesky details and stuff, but then all of a sudden we're really impatient and we're in a hurry to get things going. Oh, and I wanted to mention this before, and this is just a side note, that the United States Postal Service released a postage stamp. And so this postage stamp is for the eclipse. And the stamp is called Total Eclipse of the Sun Forever stamp. And it was released on June 20th. and it's to commemorate the solar eclipse of today. So this stamp is special. It's called a thermochromatic. It's been printed with thermochromatic ink, and so basically what that means is when pressed with a finger, the body heat turns the black circle in the center of the stamp into an image of the full moon. Why does it say full moon? It's a new moon. Okay, we'll just go with it. It turns it into the image of a full moon. The stamp image is a photo of a total solar eclipse seen in Libya on March 29th, 2006. So there you have it, a bit of interesting tidbit about the solar eclipse. And as I said, everybody's getting in on the act of this solar eclipse, including the United States Postal Service, which reminds me to go and buy some of those stamps and to keep them. Not that I'm a stamp collector, but hey, there's always a first time. And oh, what a great time under the influence of a solar eclipse, which is all about new beginnings. So there are 4 types of solar eclipses. Today's was a total eclipse. Then you have partial eclipses. And if you're not under the path of the eclipse, then you'll be viewing the partial eclipse. But technically, it was a total eclipse. And I've been having that song stuck in my head. Who's the singer? Total Eclipse of the Heart. Is it Bonnie Raitt? Now I can't remember who the singer is. Total Eclipse of the Heart was stuck in my head. And also the Carly Simon song, she quotes, and we think You're So Vain was about Warren Beatty. I don't know if she ever confirmed that. And part of that song, there was a line in that song, something about you flew up to Nova Scotia to see the eclipse of the sun. So there's 2 songs that have been like really stuck in my head today around the eclipse. That's for sure. So as I said, this is a supercharged new moon. It's solar eclipse in Leo, so it's all about creativity. Now, I've been talking about leaders and leadership, but it's also about creativity. So we might find at this time that a lot of imagination and creativity. So it's sort of like things come together. We might have been sitting here stuck on something, but it really does come together. Now, of course, we're in a Mercury retrograde period, which Mercury will turn direct September 5th. So, if you're stuck, just give yourself a break. Wait until after Mercury turns direct after September 5th. And then the ideas might flow to you. But definitely with all this planetary activity going on at the moment, lots of things are boiling and bubbling and rising to the surface. And, we're going to be in a hurry because we've got a lot of fire energy going on with these planets. But basically, stuff is happening. I should have created some bumper stickers on that. Stuff is happening with the little symbol of the solar eclipse. So with all this Leo energy, the symbol of Leo is the lion, and it's all about leadership and pride and warmth and courage and strength. And if you think of King of the Jungle, or if you're fortunate enough to have a Leo in your life, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's always a little bit of drama when it comes to this sign. Having a total solar eclipse at the last degree of Leo, definitely drama. There'll never be a dull moment, for sure, with this sort of energy. Now, Leo is a fixed fire sign, so fire is all about action. The other fire signs are Aries and Sag. Being a fixed sign can sometimes be stubborn and hard to get off course. Now, of course, there's, pros and cons to everything. But, a fixed sign, and the other fixed signs are Taurus, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So with these 4 fixed signs, it's hard to change course. They can get very stubborn, dig their heels in. If you know a fixed sign, you know exactly what I'm talking about, especially when they don't get their own way. They can get pretty stubborn. So if you think about, if you can apply that energy or those characteristics or traits to the energy of this eclipse, this is not the time to be digging heels in or to for a confrontation. It's not such a good thing either, because if you think about the technicality of the moon blocking the sun, you can apply that to something in your life might be blocked. You're not seeing beyond something, or something is blocking something else so you can't see it clearly. Doesn't help with that Mercury retrograde. But on the flip side, the good news is with this sort of energy, it's all about loyalty. Loyalty and seeing something through to the end, being devoted. And as I said, it's about drama, but drama doesn't have to always be a bad thing. It just depends. Now, the other thing with this eclipse is there is a trine from Uranus. Now, Uranus is the planet of the unexpected, and a trine is good. It's a good aspect. So we should be prepared for the unexpected. Something might suddenly happen in our lives. And again, it depends on where these aspects or these planetary influences fall in your natal chart. But the thing is, though, it's like whatever we thought might have been the path or the way changes. Basically, things come out of left field or they're unexpected, but it's a good energy for innovation or thinking outside the box. It's a great time for creative intellectual processes, particularly because there's a lot of Leo energy. Leo is one of the very creative signs. And it's sort of like if you're in a brainstorming session, in a group brainstorming session, it's a great time for that. Maybe not so much groups, but any sort of brainstorming or big picture things you need to do. This is a wonderful use of that, this planetary energy. So the key word really here is innovation and expect the unexpected. If you're a visionary, you can take center stage with this eclipse, with the trine from Uranus. And it's about being open-minded and respecting technology. And on that note, we're going to take a break, so stay tuned.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Join Vibe Nation radio host, international psychic medium Carrie Turcotte, as she guides her listeners to rediscover themselves by accessing the keys of knowledge that already exist within. Each week's show is divinely orchestrated to intertwine with the universal energies, allowing the listeners to go deeper within. At the end of each show, Carrie will tap into the energies of the listeners and give a message from Spirit about the upcoming week. If you really want to get to know who you truly are, join Carrie each Monday at 3 p.m. on Vibe Nation Radio.
This is a test to find out if you know it all when it comes to children. Name one of the leading killers of U.S. children age 1 to 13. What's the best way to protect children in a car crash? At what age and size should a child start using a booster seat?
Don't assume you know it all when it comes to car seats for your child. Go to safercar.gov/the-right-seat and know for sure. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi there, welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer Kelly Fox, talking about the solar eclipse like everyone else is talking about. It is huge news, really huge, like way outside the astrological world. This is really big news. And so just before the break, I was talking about the other planetary influences affecting this eclipse. And the big one is the trine from Uranus. So expect the unexpected with new beginnings. So it's sort of like when you put all these keywords together, it's like plans come to us that we hadn't even thought about or expected. It's sort of like a change of course, which will be difficult for some because this energy, this eclipse is in a fixed sign, and fixed signs can be quite stubborn. And as I said, there's a pro and a con to everything, or a shadow side or a positive side or whatever you want to say. So just before the break, I was saying there was a trine from Uranus. Now, remember with the a solar eclipse or even a new moon, the sun and moon line up in the same sign. So the moon and the sun are both in Leo at the very last degree. They're sitting there with the royal star Regulus and also with Mars. So with the conjunction to Mars, it's all about action and wanting to take charge, and we're raring to go. And if you find that there's a lot on your to-do list, it's quite manageable all of a sudden, because Mars really gives us the push or the surge that we're looking for. So we're all sort of like chomping at the bit, jumping up early and out the gate, galloping headlong down the track, which is good, but at the same time, with all this fiery energy, it can be sort of impatient. So it's like, be careful not to dive into something new because, oh, wow, everybody's buzzing about the eclipse and how it's all about new beginnings. Oh, let's just jump in and do something. Well, the good news is there is some influence there, another trine from Saturn, but it is in Sagittarius. So, again, it's another fire sign that wants to charge straight into something. So my advice with all this great energy and fiery get-it-done energy is make sure you have a plan and you know where you're headed. And what's really important is to have a long-term plan because you can't just do something willy-nilly. It's just got to be sort of, let's have a plan and let's stick to the plan. It's great to have a lot of energy around something, but you really need to know where you're going. It's not like an energy where you can wear a blindfold and hope for the best, or pin the tail on the donkey, if you remember that game as a kid. So we need to be careful because of this fiery energy and the involvement of Mars, planet of action, warrior planet Mars, which on the positive is all about getting stuff done, but on the negative or the flip side, it could be a bit of aggressive energy, maybe a bit of bullying, arguing, people trying to force their way on everyone else. So assertiveness can quickly turn into aggression, or risk-taking and road rage might be rampant. So we've got a lot of excess energy with all this lunar solar energy going on right now. The best way to channel it is to get plenty of exercise and try not to challenge people too much. We can be courageous and daring, but we can do it without antagonizing other people. Also, people might be feeling a bit touchy meaning emotional. It's sort of like with this energy, sheer emotion meets raw passion right now. So there could be a lot of fireworks. And it's not just today of the eclipse, it's like at this time. So it's like we have to be careful how we're manifesting this energy. There's a lot of energy at the moment. And, you know, some of us might be feeling irritable or emotional, not really sure why. So just hang in there and bear with it. And if there's any hot heads around you or road rages, just stay calm and take a deep breath. Now, as I said just before, there's the involvement of Saturn, thankfully. God, and I never usually say that about Saturn. Saturn's always a big downer. Saturn's always like our karma that we need to deal with, the responsibilities and obligations in our life. But in this case, it's sort of like it's not a breath of fresh air. That's really the wrong term for Saturn. Saturn is more, we roll up our sleeves and we get the job done, and we have patience. But, the disclaimer is Saturn is currently in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is a fire sign, and it is not known for its patience. So there's a little bit of a conflict of energy there when Saturn is in Sagittarius. But Saturn will be turning direct on Friday. So what that means is this is great energy for professional advancement, getting stuff done, hard work, being disciplined, having focus. And that's really what we need with this Mercury retrograde, because I'm sure many of you know that Mercury retrograde can bring frustration, which means we have to redo something that we really don't want to redo. I mean, nobody wants to redo anything, but Mercury retrograde has this reputation of having us redo something from the past. So with Saturn turning direct in Sagittarius, and forming a grand fire trine with the eclipse and as well as Uranus, with a little sextile there from Jupiter. It's like it's all good, but we just have to channel our energy. We have to be focused, and Saturn as part of this grand fire trine is really helping us do that. So there's a lot of like vitality and energy, which is directed around achieving practical goals with this sort of influence. And, you know, with the involvement of Saturn in this grand fire trine with the eclipse and Uranus, there really is no better time to buckle down and make some really good solid progress on long-term projects. So this is like business, but it's any personal affairs or really anything in life in general. It's a great time for investing in long-term strategies and business plans. If opportunities are coming your way, grab them. It's a really wonderful time for new beginnings, new opportunities. Just be careful about signing any sort of contract because of this Mercury retrograde. And also with this involvement of Saturn, you know, boundaries are clearly set, but they're not so rigid as what they normally might be. The other thing is it's like our emotions are pretty well directed. We're not sort of losing the plot over not very much. You know, many of us are really channeling our energy. A lot of us might have an increased sense of security at this time. We've got pretty good judgment. Many people are feeling reasonable with Saturn forming a trine to the Sun and Moon and even Mars. So I'm going to run through really fast how this eclipse, the new beginnings, will be affecting your sign. And if you're an Aries, and you're a single Aries, this is a great time to meet someone. It's all about courtship and romance. If you're a Taurus, this is a great time for you to focus on home and family, any sort of renovation or remodel. If you're a Gemini, this is about siblings, neighbours, communication. Cancer, it's about money, spending and saving money. If you're a Leo, this is about yourself and appearance. If you're looking to update your wardrobe, get a new hairstyle, it's a great time for that. If you're a Virgo, pay attention to your subconscious, your dreams, your intuition, especially with Mercury retrograde in your sign. If you're a Libra, old friends may get back in touch from the past. If you're a Scorpio, this is all about career, prestige, authority. If you're looking to change jobs, ask for a promotion, this is the time to do it. If you're a Sag, this is all about publishing and higher education and anything from faraway places or overseas. It's a good time for that. If you're a Capricorn, it's about money, insurance, inheritance. Aquarius, it's a focus for you on your partnerships. That's business or personal. And finally, if you're a Pisces, this is a wonderful time to start a new focus, a new health regime, focus on your diet and fitness. Now, also this week, tomorrow, I mentioned early on, we've got the Sun moving into Virgo, where it will be until September 22nd. Now, I promise I will talk more about Virgo and everything Virgo in next week's show. So I will only just touch on it now, but Virgo is symbolized by the maiden, and Virgo does have a reputation of being prim and fastidious for good reason. And Virgo seeks purity and perfectionism, and they can be a bit reserved and sometimes even a bit prudish, but they're not always like that, just most of the time. Virgo is a mutable earth sign, and so they're quite flexible, go with the flow, and very practical as an earth sign. Now, the other earth signs are Taurus and Capricorn, and the other mutable signs are Gemini, Sagittarius, and Pisces. I will cover more on Virgo next week, so tune in. But what I wanted to get to now is on Friday, Saturn, Lord of Karma, turns direct in Sagittarius. Now, it's not such big news when maybe Saturn out from Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. When they turn direct or retrograde, which means they change motion, technically they don't. move backwards. They just slow down, and from our perspective here on Earth, planets appear to be traveling backwards in their orbit around the sun, but technically they don't, and that includes Mercury. They just slow right down, where they look like they're moving backwards. So from an astrological point of view, the energy of that planet when it's retrograde moves backwards as well. And again, how does that affect you? Well, it will affect your natal planets in all different ways. And if you haven't got your natal chart, go to my website, theastrologer.com/chartwheel, and get a free chart wheel. And then you can follow along and see where your planets are, see where the planets were at the time of your birth. So with Saturn turning direct in Sagittarius, it's big news because it's forming a trine to this eclipse. So it sort of it makes it more potent than just like, a mid to outer planet changing direction. Not a big deal usually, but in this case, it is a big deal. Now, Saturn is Lord of Karma. It's responsibility, discipline, obligation. The rewards come from long-term planning and hard work. But the thing here is that Saturn is not well placed in Sagittarius. These two energies are fundamentally at odds with one another because, Saturn is all about restriction and responsibility, and then Sagittarius is about freedom-loving, being expansive, restless, and so on. It's the truth seeker, whereas Saturn is just sort of, so I guess Saturn is a truth seeker in one sense because it's the planet of karma. So in other words, you reap what you sow is really the motto of Saturn. Now, Saturn will remain in Sagittarius until December of this year, and then it will move into Capricorn on December 19th, and that's big news. And on that note, we will take a break, so stay tuned so I can fill you in more about the planets this week.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment, a philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Tune in to The Practical Intuitive, Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World with me, host Robin Fritz, Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. I'll cover personal and business intuition, animal communication, mediumship, space clearing, past life regression, shamanic insights, energy healing, soul choice, and more, all to help you tap your own intuitive and healing skills. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive, and now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Hi there, welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer Kelly Fox, talking about the huge planetary energies this week. And I feel like now I'm cramming it because there's so much going on. And the big news of the week, of course, is the total solar eclipse, coast to coast USA, and the exclusive eclipse that we're having here in the USA. The last time that happened was in 1776. And then, of course, just before the break, I was talking about Saturn turning direct in Sagittarius. And so this is sort of like conflicting energy. Saturn is all about conservatism, authority, the tried and true, the way things have always been done, whereas Sagittarius is all about looking for the truth and finding better ways. Saturn moves slowly. Sagittarius is a fire sign. It moves really fast. So when you put these two energies together, it's been sort of difficult. And now this Saturn is forming a really nice trine to the eclipse, as well as Uranus forming a trine to the eclipse. So we have a grand fire trine with the eclipse and Mars and Saturn and Uranus. So when you have Saturn and Uranus coming together, they're forming an exact trine November 11th. So it's like the old and the new come together, and they flow with minimal effort. So that's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, this Saturn-Uranus trine over the next few months. Very fascinating. But basically, with the involvement of the solar eclipse, this is the trigger point for new beginnings. But we need to do away with the old and things that are not working and see what progresses. And, of course, Saturn in Sag is going to be in a hurry, which it never usually is, but I would have to say more so in this sign. Now, the other things going on this week, and also, let me say one other thing about Saturn in Sagittarius. It's all about publishing and the media. So it's been interesting to read the headlines lately about, not even lately, the past few months. Saturn's about freedom and the truth. Sagittarius is about freedom and the truth, and Saturn is about tradition and it doesn't care about letting the truth free. So there was a piece here that I'd written maybe a couple of years ago, and I'd mentioned something about freedom of the press when Saturn was in Sagittarius. So I've got here in my notes, freedom of the press brought into question in some way. And so it's about controlling the media. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens by December 19th when Saturn moves into its own sign of Capricorn. The other note I have here is eco-friendly transportation with Saturn in Sagittarius. And amazingly, have you seen the driverless Ubers around town? So that's interesting as well. But overall, freedom versus restriction. Also on Friday, we've got love planet Venus moving into Leo until September 19th. There's more Leo energy. Gee, as if we didn't have enough Leo energy at the moment. So Venus moving into Leo until September 19th. So this is all very romantic and dramatic and passionate, and many of us, particularly the fire signs, Aries, Leo and Sag, will be pulling out all the stops to express our warmth and affection and expecting to be showered with adoration in return. There'll be a lot of confidence and magnetism. And if you're single, this is great news, especially if you're a fire sign. There should be no problem attracting somebody if that's what you're looking for. So we're going to be enthusiastic at this time. Not that we're not with all this other Leo energy, but hey. Also this week, as part of this eclipse energy, Mars is forming a sextile to Jupiter. Now, Jupiter was forming a sextile to not just Mars, but also the Sun and Moon, the eclipse. So this is a very physical energy. We're upbeat, many of us. It's a good time to get physical exercise or the workout done. It's really about physical energy. It's also about competition. Negotiations seem to go quite well because of the sextile. If it was a square or an opposition, it would be full-on competition, but at least this is sort of like a nice get-on with each other sort of energy. Also, this week we've got Mars trine Saturn, again, part of this eclipse energy. So it's sort of like all the pieces flow together right now when there are long-term plans or projects in place or being worked on or developed. So focus, hard work, concentration are highlighted at this time with its influence. We're pretty good with our timing, except, of course, it is a Mercury retrograde. But it's a good time to be practical and put plans into action. It's sort of like it's a time for constructive action. So like organisation and administrative tasks come together more easily now than usual. So it's sort of like there's a really good flow of energy going on. There's just tiny little hiccups, but we're not going to let that get in the way of anything, not with this grand fire train we've got going on. On Thursday, we've got Venus, love planet Venus, forming a square to unpredictable Uranus. So a change in routine is a good way to ward off any sort of potential disruptions or unstable energy that this transit may bring. So if you can just try something completely different, even just for Thursday, it'll ward off like the different direction that this energy could take when Venus squares Uranus. It's sort of like unpredictable routines when it comes to love. Romance could be a little bit dicey at this time. Some of us might be sort of quirky, but that's okay. You know, thinking outside the box is sort of the way to go. And then what else have we got going on? On Saturday, I see that the Sun conjuncts Mercury. So this is good for mental activities, even though Mercury is retrograde. Okay, all that aside, I'm going to move on now to your weekly horoscope, if that was not enough. So this week, of course, it's the eclipses. The eclipse is eclipsing everything, every other thing that is sort of pulling into its orbit. So if you're an Aries and you've been holding back from taking a creative risk, so I think with this eclipse energy, circumstances may force your hand. And so the key here is confidence to go ahead and do it anyway before you're left with no choice. If you're a Taurus, house moves, domestic matters and family issues are highlighted by this eclipse. There could be a mini family crisis, but take heart, it will be a blessing in disguise. So once the dust is settled, you will see how far you have actually come. If you're a Gemini, you have so much to teach others. You are an air sign and very cerebral after all, but you're not actually making the most of your innate skills. So the solar eclipse forces you to share your knowledge in some way. Only by going through this can you start to understand how much you have to give and then give voluntarily. If you're a Cancer, financial news will dominate your week. Whether events bring pluses or minuses to your bank account, the key is in how you react. And, of course, as a very emotional sign, should I say no more, but instead choose to take a positive, generous-minded, open-hearted view and avoid any self-pity. If you're a Leo, the solar eclipse in your sign has a dramatic effect on your self-confidence levels, and you may even feel that your very identity is under threat. But hang in there, assert yourself and stand your guard. The earth may be shifting, but you can stay steady and it will all work out in the end because there are many good other influences propping up this eclipse for you. If you're a Virgo, the solar eclipse brings fears and anxieties to the surface, but this means that you can confront them head on and heal. It will be emotional, but ultimately a positive step in the right direction. If you're a Libra, put others first, no matter what cost to yourself, but you usually do anyway. The solar eclipse is challenging your humanitarian instincts. Do you walk the walk as well as talk the talk? If not, start right now. If you're a Scorpio, pressure ratchets up at work, but the solar eclipse may mark a turning point in your career. If you want to change direction, look for signs that now is the right time. Be bold or you may miss out on opportunities. If you are a Sagittarius, your morals or beliefs are challenged by this week's solar eclipse and you may find yourself left with more questions than answers. It might be an uncomfortable experience. Talk to your faith leaders or seek answers within through meditation. If you're a Capricorn, examine your motivations carefully. This is not the time for scheming or manipulation or for treating others like fools. Be open and honest in all your dealings this week and be true to yourself. This eclipse leaves no hiding place. If you're an Aquarius, The solar eclipse occurs in your love zone, so it could be a tumultuous week for your relationship. Rest assured that you can pull through this if you want to. Challenges will make you stronger together, but it's vital that you keep talking throughout. And finally, if you're a sweet Pisces, the solar eclipse focuses on your health. If you've been neglecting yourself recently, there could be a short, sharp wake-up call which reminds you to get back on track. Foster a body-positive mindset and be kind to yourself as well as disciplined. And to check your daily, weekly and monthly horoscope, be sure to go to the OMTimes website where you can get your horoscopes by yours truly. So the big news of the week, the solar eclipse, it's done, but the effects are long-lasting depending on where it sits in your chart. We also have Saturn turning direct. It's been retrograde since April, which is forming a trine, which is a good aspect, a positive aspect to this eclipse, as well as Uranus, planet of the unexpected, forming another trine from the other direction to the solar eclipse. So there you have it, a grand fire trine, all things coming together. Thanks for joining me. Have a great week and tune in to next week's show to find out more about Virgo. This is the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelly Fox.